The Committee of the Whole is back in session. Senators, we passed out the variance sheet with the agency by agency. You should have that on your desk. And so we will begin the first round of questioning now, starting with Speaker Blas. Speaker Blas, you recognize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to the panel, thank you for being here. You know, one of the things that as we go through the budget, and one of the challenges that we continue to have is that we're basically, best we can, flying in the blind because we don't have the audit for the last fiscal year. Can anybody up here tell me when was the audit for last fiscal year? When was it due? Mr. Byrne? When was it due to be released?
It's generally due June 30th.
Okay. Can we explain why we don't have that to be able to do our analysis before us in this budget? It's now July 10th.
So this would be fiscal 25.
Right.
And as you are aware, Speaker, we released the fiscal 24 audit in April. There were considerable delays to the fiscal 24 audit. As soon as we finished the fiscal 24 audit, we moved into fiscal 25. And I think you've seen that there are a number of agencies, generally autonomous agencies, who have released their audit in the last few days or the last few weeks. The general fund, which I think is what you're interested in, or we're all interested in, is generally included in the Department of Administration's financial statements, but also includes the Guam Department of Education, which is a large part of the general fund audit. So I don't have that number to incorporate yet, and we are moving forward with an accelerated pace to produce and I think this is a generally accepted date between ourselves, the public auditor, and the external auditors, to issue the audit by the end of November.
By when?
End of November.
End of November.
Yes, sir.
Do you see any value if we had this report produced and provided on time, that report would have with this budget discussion?
Well, financial statements always have a value. Throughout the period that I've been in this position, we've been trying to, and we've certainly got much further along, to produce financial statements on a regular basis, which are reliable and which can be used if you don't have the audit, which can be used for budgetary and other purposes. In the last few months, we've been issuing monthly budget expenditure reports to all the line agencies, and very fortunately, we've been getting responses and reactions to that. The CRER is a good reflection of the revenue side of it. So it would be my professional approach to rely less on the audit, which is a confirmation and shouldn't be a revelation. I think I've said this before, but rely upon the monthly, quarterly, which we do produce, quarterly statements as a basis for all financial decisions.
Other than what the finances are at the end of the year, what can anyone expect to find in the audit with regards to performance or how the money is being spent, or how the money was spent, or how the money should be spent?
That's not reported elsewhere.
Okay.
Very little that's not reported elsewhere.
Okay. Well, I do understand, but just for the edification of people who see the value, who also, want to know what value that audit could bring to this discussion. What will that audit be able to point out that the CRER, because you said you would rely less on the audit and more on the CRER?
No, I would rely more on formal, regularly produced financial statements that are actually in budget form. I mean, most of the audit, except for one page, is not in budget form. So a reader needs to be well informed to make that transition from the accounting basis to the budgetary basis. Obviously, no one wants to be without, in perpetuity, not to have audits. We're doing our best to catch up. Compared with most of the other jurisdictions that are currently struggling for one reason or other, we're way ahead. We've met several times with the auditors to try and make sure it's a more productive process, and that's how we arrived at the expected delivery date.
Okay. What was the excess reported in the last month's CRER?
63 plus million.
63 plus million.
Yeah, and we have a back of the napkin that for June, and we're at 88.
Pardon me?
88 million above.
Okay, and you made mention of what you anticipate the excess will be in the end of this fiscal year, and what was that number?
What we normally do is give you the actual month, so in this case it would be June, and then we give you a 12-month revenue projection. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we just say, okay, July, August, and September, as long as we hit those revenue marks, we don't adjust those revenues because they're future revenues to be collected and the amount determined. But all else being equal, we have June collections that were already $88 million above. 68 million, I believe, is just the tax categories. Individual, corporate, and withholding.
What did your CRER report at the end of the fiscal year 2024, and what did the final audit report as your excess in 2024, FY 2024?
You know that number?
I don't recall what the CRER excess was, but
what was the excess that was reported then in the audit?
But the audited amount was 92 million, of which about 64 million was the surplus, restricted surplus, reported by GDOE.
So I guess what the audit was showing then was that the government was collecting more than it needed. Right? You see where I'm going at, Lester, here?
Yeah, I do, but this body has had the ability to adopt conservative budgets and then appropriate the excess to a very large degree. So what you're collecting, particularly with the tax categories, you've been able to use those funds for a myriad of reasons that you didn't anticipate, that we didn't anticipate. Bailouts to GMH, power credits, any number of things that the body has responded quickly to, So I wouldn't say you collected more than you needed, because there's always, well, what was it that we didn't get around to?
Okay.
Yeah, I think, if I could put it in my words, we collected more than we anticipated.
And more that we had budgeted for, right?
Yes.
Okay. How much does this, Lester, how much did this total, this listing? What was the variance here?
Senator, I didn't total it up. I just provided it to the body so that it would be something that you could look at as far as what it is that you're not funding. And there's a couple of things here that I think stand out. Number one, the biggest one is Simon Sanchez, along with DOC. But I also mentioned that we're not putting any funding into additional repairs for schools. We're not funding village street stuff. So Medicaid, we believe, there's a shortfall there. So any number or combination of these items here is not addressed.
Okay. Steve and Vanessa, based on this figure, these concerns that were brought up by the administration, putting together the budget, is there an explanation as to, or some reasoning as to, can you rebut any of this?
Yes, Senator. We can basically have a response to every concern that they brought up. And I can start with the first one, if you talk about Sanchez High School. As we all know, this has been an issue going on for years. And again, when it came to the 27th budget, I was approached and says, well, are we going to include another $16.3 million for Simon Sanchez? And I said, well, show me something in writing that obligates this government that we owe $16.3 million in some sort of contract, some sort of obligation, some sort of debt service, so we can appropriately set aside this money for this purpose. If I was just to do it arbitrarily for FY27, what makes that any difference if we didn't do it in 26, we didn't do it in 25, we didn't do it for the last 10 years? I was just looking for something concrete, and normally in an annual budget, you budget for something that's already either fixed, cost in the government of Guam, or something that you know you're going to repeat annually, such as contracts and things like that. So we budget accordingly for those. But something, a ticket item like this, it's been in the passing for the last so many years. And I was just asking the question, show me something that will commit this government for us to appropriate $16.3 million. I never got an answer. So, of course, we didn't include it in the budget. Not to say that it's not a priority, not to say I don't think that we can fund it. We seem to find funding to fund anything when need be. But that's the only reason why it wasn't included in the 27 budget.
Continue. Continue. There's more.
You want me to go down to the whole list? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
For the next one, which is the claim of no funding for DOC modernization, the $5 million. Again, in FY24, we appropriated $5 million for the same purpose. As we speak today, I've been told that $5 million has been untouched. There are 3 months left in the fiscal year. I'll say 4, including, 3 months left in the fiscal year. And by my recollection, my experience, there's no way they're going to spend $5 million in 3 months for this particular item. So if this appropriation remains available for next fiscal year, that will fund the $5 million that's required in FY27 without having to touch or obligate any additional revenues needed for this. Okay. Reducing public works streetlights, road resurfacing, $10 million. I believe this appropriation was made, if I'm not mistaken, in FY 23 or 24.
No, this is a 10 million. This is a BBR one.
But aside from the 10 million, every year we actually set aside and appropriate $2 million for road improvement, resurfacing, and public works. Again, the 10 million was done 3 years ago. It's not an annual recurrence in a budget. And this year, you know, with the funding they have for the road repairs, for the highway funding and everything else, we just, again, we felt that this money, this particular item could not be funded, not that we didn't want to fund, was not funded and not included in the 27 budget. Before I continue on, just let me again say this, and maybe you can get a reason why a lot of things weren't funded. When the body took, in this budget, it's proposing to reduce the BBT by 0.5%. If you recall last year, that 0.5% amounted somewhere to about $38 million. And that was paid against a 5% reduction from the BBT. When you apply another 0.5% in FY 27, that amount actually grows simply because your base denominator is not 5%. It becomes 4.5. So instead of just taking really 10%, it actually came out to 11. So the amount that was reduced in the FY 27 amounted more to like anywhere from $40 to $42 million. Okay? So taking into account that we reduced the BBT by almost $40 million, something has to give in the budget. We cannot fund everything that was requested in the executive budget because it included that 0.5%, which equates to $40 million. So in other words, we cut the budget by $40 million. Something has to give. So it wasn't for me to decide the priority and who gets to get what. We just went down the list. We made sure that we funded all the fixed costs, all the contracts that we need to fund, and all those other things that we felt through justification, through whatever means that solidified these numbers that finally got into the budget bill, those numbers stayed. Others didn't make it.
Mr. Speaker, if I may. Sure. What Mr. Guerrero just said basically mirrors what I said earlier. When you cut the budget by $40+ million, something has to give. Now, I was not asked about Simon Sanchez. I wasn't asked about DOC. Now, I told the body earlier today that we went through a procurement. We selected the top, most qualified person to build Simon Sanchez, and we were in negotiations, and then there was a protest. So to say that there's nothing contractually, that's true. But we're in the procurement. We're right in the middle of the procurement, and it seems like we're going to pull the rug from right underneath the vendor by not funding it. And I'll remind the body that this year, the Simon Sanchez appropriation was for the Governor's Transfer Authority. Hardly an appropriation. And I do have to remind the body that we're moving forward with DOC. I mentioned that this morning. We're looking to do an RFP. We need the money. But I agree with Mr. Guerrero. When you cut the budget, you can't fund everything. And there's no disagreement about that. None at all.
You can proceed.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the next one, the S bill, you said adopted the same revenues for the highway fund as EBR. However, there was no provision to extend the Gas Tax Relief Act into FY 27. Remember, it was the position basically of the committee that any measures that were included in the FY 26 budget as a floor amendment would not be incorporated into the FY 27 budget. Doesn't mean it can't be entertained. It doesn't mean it can't be discussed. It's just that's the position based on the guidelines we put ourselves that this particular measure wasn't included because it was done through a floor amendment last year, and the decision not to put any floor amendments into the 27th budget. That's why it's not there. Reducing funding for public health, 3.9 million reduction overall in local funds versus the EBR. Claims that it affects the local match for various programs, resulting in significant decreases in federal match. Then they cite the total comparison, or the total reduction is 5.8 million in local match, which equates to a 28.9 million reduction in federal match for Medicaid. And it goes down to say for other federal match programs, the EBR public health did not follow allocation match, thereby reducing the actual federal match that will be available for public health by 26 million. Then it says sub-bill kept the funding ratio for public assistance payments at 50-50 ratio. However, it's changed. It will be changed to 75 local, 25 federal in FY27. The 1.8 million increase in the SBO over 2026 insufficient. Bear in mind, before we do any type of final appropriation level for any departments, we take the liberty of reaching out to all the departments and ask them for their input. Granted, they have submitted a budget, departmental budget that was prepared 7 months ago, and it was based on a ceiling that was given to them, not based on what their requirements are. So their ceiling is already set. Okay, so when we talk to these agencies, they're coming in and there's just not one agency, I take it back, maybe just one or two agencies that says status quo is fine. But every other agency that we've dealt with, they said the ceiling is insufficient. Okay, we take that into account. But in the case of public health, we reached out to public health. We talked to I think, the chief financial officer, and he indicated that the amount of general fund appropriation for public health is sufficient to cover all program costs moving forward in 2027. Mind you, this is coming from the agency, not OFB. So when we take it to heart and says, oh, well, if you guys are okay with the ceiling, then there's no need for me to give you $1 more. And they're saying absolutely right. Mind you, as we go to the departments, as we deal with the department's budget, when we get into the chapters, we'll also reveal the lapses that these departments are incurring. And you will be surprised how much lapses these departments are incurring. And I can't see it, and I'll say it now, for this body, or even for this committee or my office, to keep allocating and appropriating monies to these agencies that are constantly lapsing every year, do not have the ability to spend, for whatever the reason is. I'm not going to point fingers why they can't spend it. But the bottom line is, they're not spending it. Why should we keep appropriating if they can't spend the money they have this year and the year before and the year before that? This body has entertained requests from agencies for carryover going back 2 to 3 years. But yet every year, we're faced with the task of appropriating more because of the claim that they're short. And I'll tell you one thing right now, that's not how it's done. Now, whatever the reason why they can't spend, I don't know. Well, I do know, but that's beyond me, okay? But we'll help them. But I just can't see us keep appropriating money to these agencies when they have years of lapsing. I'll move on to the next one. Reduce funding for GIPWIC. 2.9 million reduction versus the EBR will impact contracts for patients, including level 2 residential. There's like 4 or 5 different contracts that they have. 373,000 increase in the SBO over FY26 is insufficient. Again, I would say, One of the things we're noticing with the agencies now, and to me it's kind of daunting and very worrisome. The agencies right now, through either miscellaneous appropriation, through floor amendments, through other financial resources, whether it be federal funds or whatever it be, are increasing their operational costs to a level that I'm telling you, for me personally, it'd be almost impossible to continue at that level of expenditure. In the case of JIPWIC, I believe their contractual obligation increased almost 2.3 million, if not 3 million, in FY26 alone over FY25. That money, the money they used to do that, I believe came from also floor amendment. It also came from federal funds, and it also came from additional monies that I honestly believe wasn't intended to be embedded in their fixed costs to continue on to the next fiscal year. I think the idea when floor amendments are made on this floor was to help them, help the agency to get by. It's not, I don't think it's intended to be embedded in their fixed costs, because they're going to come back next year and the year after that and continuously ask for these high levels of expenditures. Whether or not this government can afford to maintain that, I don't know. Revenues are great. They're coming in. But at what point are we going to say enough? We need to control. We need to put measures into place to say, hey, we understand there's never going to be enough to provide services. But are we willing to keep growing the pot to a point where all of a sudden within 3 years from a $2 million program, we're paying for an $8 million program? And that's the scary part, especially when it comes to budgeting. How do you allocate limited resources? Going back to, continuing on to the reduced funding for DISIT. Again, DISIT is another one of those programs that increase their contractual obligations. And what we did is we did give them a bump in general fund appropriation, but not to the amount that we're asking for.
That's what I mean.
Okay? Yeah, and that applies to any department. I honestly believe, if you look to the department savings, we gave actually all departments a little bit of additional funding, whether it be general fund, increase in their federal fund, in their special funds, or any type of other resources that were available to them. We did, but we definitely didn't give them up to the level they were requesting, because that level they were requesting is not the same as what's in the EBR. Reduced funding for COLA, 2.7 million, a reduction versus the EBR. Well, under the program requirements based on actual expenditure rate for the past year. Although the SBO increased COLA over FY26 by 1.16 million, it is not the level of actual payments for FY25. Well, again, like the departments, I called up retirement. I spoke to the administrator of the retirement office. I said, by the way, can you please give me a more accurate number of what your COLA requirements would be? And she said, well, the amount that you're requesting for right now of $19,657,500 would be sufficient to cover all COLA payments going into FY27. Now, this is coming from the horse's mouth. You can't get any more accurate than that. What we paid last year, granted, we paid $2 million more. I'm not going to dispute it. But if they're saying all they need is $19 million to fulfill this requirement, I'm going to appropriate $19 million. If you say $20 million, I'll appropriate $20 million. But it's coming from them. Granted, the EBR was prepared 8 months ago. Things change. Retirees' number change. So it affects everything. It's a moving target, but at that point in time, this is exactly what was submitted. So we worked on it. The other one, reduced funding for residential treatment fund, $700,000. I believe what the residential fund was requesting for this year was 1 million. We gave 300,000 more. Again, it's one of those areas that I couldn't just give $1 million. I think their current appropriation is, I think the current level is 100, 200, and they went all the way to $1 million. I said, you know what? Let me try to give you something to help. Not to leave you out to dry, I gave you 300,000. Reducing spending for supplemental annuity, 770. Again, this is another thing we contacted retirement. These are retirement numbers. Supplemental annuity, what they're requesting for the general fund was 5.2 million. I gave them the 5.2 million. These are actual numbers that are coming from them. Major reduction in public safety agencies as DOC, GPD, GFD, DYA, which will impact annual training cycles for GPD, DOC, and GFD, Operation General to include funding for contracts such as the NG 911 system and the GFD, and prevent DOA from hiring much needed vacancies to best serve our people, our population. Again, for DOC, Guam Fire, and Guam Police, we run, including Customs, but I guess Customs, we won't talk about them now. But at least for those three agencies, we run cycles every year, required by law. The minimum is 20 FTEs per cycle. Again, we contacted these agencies, and we asked them, oh, by the way, we're going to fund these cycles, but can you tell me when are you planning to begin the cycles? Because they make a big difference. The appropriation that's in the EBR is to fund the cycles for 12 months. These cycles don't start until halfway during the fiscal year. Some of them start January, some start February, some start April. So what is the logic of funding a cycle for the whole year where only you need funding for 6 months out of the year? So again, it's not that we don't want to fund it. We're just saying, what is the required amount needed to get these cycles running throughout the fiscal year? You start picking them up in April, you only have 6 months left of the fiscal year. These positions, one fiscal year ends, the next fiscal year comes on, these positions are already absorbed in the following year's budget when they submit it. So the only thing we do every cycle is that I'm thinking logically, we appropriate what's needed to put these people on board through the cycle, not for the whole year. I can understand why are we funding for the whole year when the requirements is only for 6 months out of the year. This generates millions in lapses if you do it this way. Again, and that's it. And I'm glad Mr. Carlson recognized that we did do some good by appropriating in areas that wasn't included in the EBR. Okay, but other than that, that's my justification for it. And I took the liberty of taking this list and adding up all the things that was said that we didn't fund. And it came up to about $43.7 million. It's just like by coincidence, it's almost the exact amount of the 0.5% cut in BBT. So I'm just, I don't know, just by coincidence, okay, I don't know, but there it is. So if these are the items that weren't funded, then they were probably part of the cut items on the cut list. I hope, Senator, that explained. I went through every single one. Is there anything else you'd like me to explain?
Yes.
Yes.
Along those lines, you talked about the anticipated lapses for this fiscal year. What's that final figure that you can anticipate the lapses to be? The total.
Absolutely. Senator, when we talk about lapses, what we do is we take the total appropriation for the agencies, we take the current expenditures to the period. What we did in this particular project, we took it up to May, because that's the most recent number we can pull out of the CER report that shows what the expenditure of the departments are. We annualize that out, okay? So we take the total expenditures as of May, divided by eight months, and annualize it out for the next four months. Whatever's left at the end of the 4 months, you can consider as lapses. I mean, we may be off $1 or $2, $1,000 here, $10,000 there. When we're talking about tens of millions, okay, give me a 5–10% error rate. I can accept that. We're not going to capture everything, but it gives you a snapshot, picture in time, how much and how well the departments are doing. Not to say at the end of the year they're going to generate all these lapses, but we need this type of information in order to do this type of work today. I don't have the luxury of waiting tomorrow, and I'm glad Mr. Carlson, revealed that today, based on the June CER report, we have like $80 million, $88 million. So, in all honesty, I mean, if we knew that, and we had the time to go back and, I don't know, maybe reconsider part of that, so be it. But again, this budget was based on information that was provided in the EBR, especially when it comes to revenues, and we almost 99.9% agree with the revenue levels in the EBR. But that EBR level is, I don't think, considered the CER where we are today at 88 million. Because if that was considered, I'm sure their revenue estimate would be a little higher. But we're almost exactly that of the EBR. We're only actually 3.5 million difference in the EBR when it came to revenues. But remember, I had to cut the appropriation level by almost 40 million to get there.
So what were the lapses? How much total?
Are you talking about the lapses that we identified as of May?
Yeah.
Oh, hang on.
Mr. Speaker, while he's looking for that number, we should probably sit down more often because the way that he's looking at lapses and the way that we look at them are kind of different, actually very different. We went through an exercise to see what we could garner from using the governor's transfer authority for any one of the 3 items that she was authorized to do, especially the airport, the aviation fuel tax. If we could have mustered that money and not have that part of the discussion that we had at the end of June, we would have done it, but we didn't have the wherewithal. So I think it's a matter of just good governance going forward. OSB and BBMR should probably get together a little bit more frequently so that we can show him what we're doing and how we're projecting stuff. And I know he came from BBMR, but things have changed. So I cannot agree that there are lapses available from the line agencies to be able to supplement other operational requirements. If they're from autonomous agencies or people that we have no budgetary authority over, then that's a different story.
Okay. So what was the number?
The amount we came out, Senator, again, is roughly about 18.3 million.
18.3 million.
Yes, sir. Again, like I said, this is as of May. We already got the June CER report, so I'm sure that amount is going to go down. It might even go up. It just depends what their expenditure rate is. If they spend less in the month of June, expect to save more. If they spend more, of course, it's going to go down. But again, like I said, there's a margin of error. Like Mr. Carlson said, the way we calculate lapses is maybe a little bit different, but I don't think it's going to be more than 50% different. And I totally agree with Mr. Carlson. Having the ability to generate lapses gives the administration the opportunity to address a lot of other issues that weren't part or considered in the budget, but are vital to entertain and do. I'm just saying, at this point in time, this is how much we estimated how much it is, and whether or not this money is going to play a big role in the departments going forward in FY27, it can. I'm sure it will. And it has proven in the past through this body, not this body, but this legislature, by allowing and providing provisions for carryover. So it's evident that they are lapsing because this body authorizes that type of provision. The only thing we don't know at the time that we give them the carryover provision is the exact amount. But we know they're lapsing.
Okay, is the 18.3 I considered in the $88 million anticipated excess revenue at the end of the fiscal year? Do you count that 18.3 as part of the $88 million? Is it counted?
I'm not too sure, Senator, if they're considering that. But for our purposes, it was only to identify how much or what resources could be available to the agency in FY27.
And we could have considered this had we had information, historical information, like an audit that was due on June 30th to be able to help us ascertain these things, right?
The audits, Senator, again, like you said, the audit is finite. You don't argue against the audit. The numbers we use going into fiscal year 27, utilizing the FY25 unaudited, which is only the CER report, of course, those numbers vary.
Yeah.
They can fluctuate.
Okay.
And
what I'm getting at here is even if we were to go conservatively, and the lapses, you claim right now about 18.3 possibly at the end of the fiscal year. Let's go conservative numbers here. Let's say $14 million that we're going to have lapses at the end of the fiscal year. Okay? And you add that to the $88 million in anticipated excess revenues. My DI math here says it's going to come out to $102 million. And your final figure of everything that was brought concern from the administration came out to $43.7 million, and we're short. We couldn't spend $102 million, or we can't spend $102 million, or we had excess of $102 million, and we're concerned about $43.7 million.
Senator, the only thing I can say is that, you know, the amount that Mr. Carlson noted of $88 million of what excessive revenues to be generated in this fiscal year by the end of the fiscal year, remember part of that is already spoken for. Okay, it's already, we need to address other appropriations that were made against those funds and take that into account. If you're going to include the potential lapses, that again, like I said, it's a fluid number. It changes. Today it's 18. Tomorrow, I mean, next month it could be 10. The next day it could be 5. But the logic that you're thinking about is just it could accumulate to a huge amount. And if you're saying right now, if you add the 88 plus the 18, it comes out to 102. As we sit here today, yes, tomorrow may change. Okay, but yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But you know, with all certain, we can't do it with all certainty because we're doing it again. We're doing this without an audit. But you know, my DI math comes out to, while we're 43. One side says we short everybody by $43.7 million. At the end of this fiscal year, taking in consideration everything, even if we were to consider $43.7 million, there's $58.3 million still hanging around. So, and that's still with a cut in the BPT. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Chairman Dueñas, you're recognized.
Excuse Masi, Mr. Chair. Just want to follow up, Steve, on the questioning from the speaker. So you say we have costs appropriated against it, but those are one-time costs, correct? We'll have a new fiscal year in 2027, right?
You can say that, Senator, yes.
So if we were tracking the same way, that would be new money that would be available for appropriation on top of what if we adopted this level.
Conceivably, yes.
Lester, 16 million for Simon Sanchez. In the much reported known negotiations that you're currently involved in, you stated in those negotiations that the 16.3 has been appropriated in fiscal year 2026, correct?
No, sir. What I said was the legislature gave the governor transfer authority to pay the 16 million.
But you had a funding source.
No, I don't. So I have a fundamental disagreement with the premise from OFB that there are lapses, because what I said was there are three things that the legislature appropriated, authorized with the governor's transfer authority. One was Simon Sanchez. The other one was the fuel tax arrears. If we could have done the governor's transfer authority from the supposed lapses, which again, I think we just need to tighten up our ship here, then we would have done it. We would not have come down here.
Then how are you in negotiations if you don't have an appropriation that you said you needed?
Well, you know, there was an appropriation, there was an authorization. However, there are means to be able to take with this body, as the speaker noted. There's the $88 million, and Mr. Guerrero is correct. You should probably net out the $25 million for the hospital and for DOC, just to safeguard it. But you could appropriate that from the excess. So we weren't ready to come, as Mr. Guerrero said, with a contract. But the idea that we're a lot closer to getting something done than we are not getting something done, and then to not fund it is again, it's disingenuous at the least.
Is the 16.3 currently that you say that is available or could be available, is that in addition to the 166 authorized by the McGrath Act, or is it part of it?
This is the thing that's a little bit funny about the authorizing legislation. It says that the financing cannot go more than 30 years, but it authorizes 2 years of pre-construction and design work. So in essence, it's 32 years. So we do need to fund the 32 years, because that's what the most qualified bidder's proposal is. It's not 30 years, it's 32 years.
That was never represented to us, even when you asked for the initial appropriation.
Well, you know, this procurement stuff is supposed to be held closer to the vest than not, but there's been so much media on it. There's been so many stories about, you know, taking into account the procurement record and records that were released and stuff that was posted, you know, in an attempt to be transparent. So, you know, if you were to speak to the most qualified bidder, he will verify what I'm saying. So we have time and time again tried to maintain the you know, procurement, but I don't have any problem saying what I'm saying now because it's all over the news.
Thought I heard you say during the negotiations that 146 or 144 was going to be what he had to live with in order to build the school, and that's what you were negotiating because you didn't have the 2 extra years.
He was at, we shouldn't be talking numbers, sir, but you know, trust me.
We have to, because I'm going to tell you right now on this body, if they're going to appropriate 16.3 on top of the 16.3 appropriated in this year, they are going to be now, many on this floor who said they didn't believe that there was 2 additional years in this financing, they will be appropriating for 2 additional years.
Go look at the legislation, sir. It's very clear that the 2 years are authorized. So you really need to take the finance portion and the cash funded portion, put them together, it's 32 years.
I hope that those are listening on the floor that want to raise the BPT again back to 4.5 because they need to fund this. They're now going to be funding 2 additional years to the Makati.
It's what's authorized, sir. I'm not, you know, look, that's beyond me. It's
Okay.
on black and white.
Be cautious, buddy.
Me?
To the body.
Oh, okay.
Talking to my
I
colleagues.
thought you said buddy.
Talking to my colleagues.
All right. And just so I may, look, Mr. Guerrero and I, we go way back, right? We have a good relationship. You know, while he was saying that he talked to public health and that they'll live, I just got a text from the director. And I believe several senators here also got a text from the director saying that they do not agree. So I'm not really, he would not say anything that wasn't true or that he didn't believe to be true. But he said he spoke to the chief financial officer. Now I got the director texting me basically saying, no, that's not true. So things that were done and things that were said, you know, things change. I agree with Steve, things change. But when you have the director listening into the budget discussions and refuting what is being said by her staff member, you know, the body needs to be aware of that. We're talking about public health, talking about Medicaid. And I would also like to point out to the body that the behavioral health, DSID, and, you know, I don't disagree with what Mr. Guerrero said about the contractual cost rising, but we don't control that. These are contracts for providers. And the cost to the providers is going up just like everything else is going up. So, you know, there are things that they do in-house, there are things that they have control over, but when you're bidding out the services that they have, you know, and the responses come in at a higher rate, I mean, what are we going to do? Not provide these very critical services to people that are vulnerable? I mean, we could probably draw the line on certain things that don't involve the most vulnerable of our population. But I would also take a position that we actually should elevate these people who are more vulnerable.
Want to address that, Steve? Mr. Guerrero, you want to address that claim?
Again, Senator, I mean, if clarification is being made here, you know, to say whether or not what was said and communicated to OFB is no longer true, then so be it. But I have my staff. I spoke to the gentleman myself, and he assured me that being the financial officer, and out of anybody in a department, the financial officer should know exactly the financial condition and the requirement of the agency. You can be the director, fine. If you're a good director and you're on top of things, kudos to you. But very few, I find, can do that. But you're talking about the people, the layman that does this stuff every day, that hearts, and this particular person that we're talking to, I can attest, he has a budget background. I work with him out of the Bureau budget, so I know his capability. I know his honesty. I know his work ethics. I'm not going to challenge him, but I'll tell you one thing right now. I will stick to what I told you on this floor, what I said on this floor, as being true. That's all I'm going to say.
Lester, did you transfer $20 million in ARP funds to Public Works for roads as mentioned by the director?
Yes, I did.
Those are for village streets, correct?
Those are for village streets.
So you're quibbling about the 10 million right now that was done a few fiscal years ago. We put 2 million, so we have 22 million right now available when this bill passes.
We're hoping that that 20 million has to be all expended by December of this year. So the 2 million will come into play after the 20 million is exhausted.
Steve, I want to go back now to this issue of the lapses, because I think that we're kind of getting lost in the weeds on that. I want to go back to whether available for appropriation or the issue of the agency, meaning that if we did a status quo budget for the agency in this fiscal year, or a status quo plus, that means if that agency is lapsing, they have that status quo budget going into the new fiscal year to try to expend those funds in that fiscal year, correct?
Yes, Senator.
So do you look at that as a cut to the agency?
Absolutely not. Because what it tells me, Senator, and if you're familiar with budgeting, is that when you budget for something in anticipation that you're going to spend this money over a period of time. If that does not materialize, at the end of the time, you're saying, oh, I got all this money. But lo and behold, you're budgeting again for the same period, the next, for example, in government, 12 months. What's happening here is that the departments are coming in asking for the same level of funding that they received the year before, generating all these lapses that they couldn't spend. Again, for whatever reason. And I would say part of the reason, the blame can be on the department. A lot of it is external. All the other forces, the programs, the systems, everything else that just convolutes everything, that just doesn't allow them to spend the money. But they're coming back the next fiscal year asking for the same level. And my only question to them is that if I gave you $100 today and you can only spend $50 during that period, why are you asking me for $100 when I know you have $50 more to spend? If you don't take this into account, you're going to give them another $100 the next year. Now, all of a sudden, their appropriation level becomes $150, way beyond the means of them to spend it because they couldn't spend $50 the year before. Now, it could be one of those years that's tough. I understand that. Whatever the anomaly, yes. But when you see a pattern, year after year after year, you got to come and stop thinking like, hey, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's find out what's why. Why are these departments not spending? On a lot of them, their answer to me is this is external, Steve. Whether it be personal, whether it be procurement, whether it be contractual problems, whether it be legal, AG not signing off on their contracts. But those are a host of all problems that we know exist in the government of Guam. It's not going to go away overnight. So I'm just saying, to answer your question, we do take into account when we set the ceilings. Because, I, for one, will not continue to appropriate knowing these departments don't have the ability or can't spend the funds.
Steve, on the $16 million for Simon Sanchez, 16 plus, I'm really perplexed here because we had this conversation. This anticipation of, you've always told me that appropriation should be going to market, meaning you're planning that they're going to close and you're going to have debt service. Were you ever under the understanding that we needed 2 advance payments, 2 fiscal year payments in order to be able to go and try to build Simon Sanchez?
Senator, no.
Thank you.
I was never afforded, nor was I ever told that would be a requirement in order to start the Simon Sanchez construction development, whatever. I was never told that. I don't see it in writing. I don't see it in the requests. I don't see it in the memo. I hear it. I'm hearing it, like I'm hearing it now.
You were the budget director in fiscal year 2024, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's when the act passed, correct?
Yes.
If that was the case, shouldn't you have appropriated $16.3 million in that year?
Absolutely. It would have been the first day of the start of this contract to get Simon Sanchez going.
And then if you appropriate in fiscal year 25, you have your $32 million and your 32 years, correct?
Yeah. But here we are today, 3 years later, and they're telling me, I'm hearing this again, that we need to come up with $32 million to start this. That was never brought up in any conversation in the 26th or in the 27th budget discussion. So I don't know what to say. I didn't appropriate 16.3 million in the 27 budget because, again, there's nothing concrete for me to set aside 16.3 million.
Director, it wasn't only brought up in the, not brought up in the 26 of the 27, it wasn't brought up in the 24 and the 25 after the law passed.
You know, Senator, I don't know. I'll just go back to as far back as my memory will serve me correctly, at least the last 2 years. That much I can say. But you're right. The law was passed since 24, 25. So, you know.
So if this fiscal team coming down here telling this was known that since the law passed, they didn't request it in the EBR in fiscal year 2024, did they?
Not to my recollection.
They didn't request it in fiscal year 2025, correct?
I don't recall it in the 25 budget request.
The procurement wasn't out yet.
You're saying you needed it.
No. Hang on a second. It was in the EBR. The procurement went out, I want to say November or December of 2025. So we didn't know what the need was until after we went through the interviews and the ranking and all that other kind of stuff. So we put it in the EBR. And I'm sorry if you're not aware that the legislation that this body passed calls for 32 years, because it does. I'm going to get it for you and disseminate it out because I'm getting the impression that, you aren't necessarily taking what I'm saying as being authorized.
Lester, we're going to go back to the tapes, and we listen openly to that negotiation. I listened to every single one of those procurement tapes, and consistently in those procurement tapes, there is this, you're going to have to go to the legislature for an additional 2 years. There was sounding to me like that whole negotiation didn't know that there were 32 years.
Okay, you are saying that I said you're going to have to go back down there. He's saying, no, it's there. And you know what? We're getting into procurement again, sir. But
this is in the ether. This is wild. We are not violating anything. This is part of a discussion and that you were having with the team there in negotiations.
What I said was, please listen to this. If you want, because I was pushing back on that. That's why he said, if I need to, and he made some jokes about upping the political contributions to the body, okay? And it was a joke.
Probably to the front office too.
Maybe, but regardless, sir, I was pushing back on the request for the 32 years. I said, no, it's got to be 30. And then he kept pointing that, you know what? It's authorized. And his bid was predicated on it. Now, if you're listening to the tapes, you should have known that I was pushing back hard because I didn't think that
That's why I'm trying to understand why you're pushing for these appropriations. Because to me, this shouldn't be done until that thing's ready to go to market.
The body authorized.
Because you're arguing it as part of the reason why this BPT reduction is a sin, but I'm telling you, I'm going to be really watching closely on this floor when they try to raise that BPT if this is one of their reasons, because many on this floor openly have had big problems with the discussion on appropriating 2 years additional appropriation. So get us the information so we know, because I'm telling you, that is a big point of contention in this body. Final question. Steve, on this $88 million, is that performing better than what you actually talked about at this point and stage with close to a little bit over a quarter left for the fiscal year? I think you and I were contemplating somewhere around maybe 65 or 70 for the fiscal year.
Again, sir, considering the CER as of May is what we had at the time. We were looking at an excess revenue level of about 65 million. We used the 65 million to base this budget on. The new number that is being provided today is as of June CER, and it's only June 10th. We normally don't get into the 20th. So, does it help? Yes. It shows that we generated, 15 million $18 million more, right? So I'm just saying that, in all fairness, whatever the CER is reporting today, as they're reporting to out, is what they anticipate to collect by the end of the fiscal year. Remember, we also have July, August, September to go. That CER can rise, but it can also drop.
It can do either one, but it's been
Absolutely.
rising. But let me just finish with this. And that's performing with a 4.5 BPT, which means the 0.5 has not have a major effect. In fact, we're making money.
The only thing I can say, sir, is implementing a 0.5% reduction in the BBT in FY26 still did not have a negative effect in the collection of general fund revenues in FY26.
Thank you very much. Vice.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Gumtato, you're recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, OFB, BBMR, DOA, and Reverend Tax for being with us this afternoon. Now, according to the latest CRER, just before our budget deliberations, individual income tax collections are down $4.9 million year to date, even as withholding is up $5.3 million. For anyone on the panel, help us understand and explain the gap between what's being withheld from paychecks and what's ultimately being collected? And is this a result of the refund timing issue, and do you expect it to reverse or persist going into the new fiscal year?
You know, that's that particular thing with individual tax. So in the May CRER, we're basically looking at it being 107. The back of the napkin CRER that we were talking about actually has their number of 111. So did it improve? Yes, it improved. With timing and the processing of tax returns and stuff like that. And remember, there was a 30-day grace period that was provided after Sinlaku. So a lot of what we're getting is financial information that's a little dated, because of things that happen. But the good news is that the OFB number, which again I appreciate and applaud them, because we were at 115 and they split the difference. And now they'll be seeing in the July report that their number for 27 is actually being achieved in 26. So it's not like their number is higher than what we're actually going to collect. So it's a good reflection on the budgeting and the passage of time.
Marie, you were going to chime in?
I was going to just point out about the delayed tax filing deadline, or the extension. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Now, speaking as Public Safety Chair, the Enhanced 911 Fund is down 16% year over year, even while beating its own budget. We're, in this particular substitute bill, looking to appropriate $450,000 for a 911 surcharge rate study in this Budget Act. Now, discussion about the modernization effort has been underway since the early of 2025. Does BBMR or anyone on the panel have a recommendation on whether that surcharge rate needs to change, and whether it should be reviewed on a regular schedule going forward? Now, the last time the E911 surcharge rate was changed, actually hasn't. It was adopted in 1999, 27 years ago, and the collections began in 2002, 24 years ago. So any insight into your take on the modernization of the rate, or with the E911?
I think the surcharge study is a step in the right direction, and I think that this is a classic example of charges that we need to review on a more frequent basis because of the passage of time, and the more important the 911 system is to public safety. So having not done a study for a while, and I'm glad that you're not jumping into just legislatively imposing an increase. I'm glad that there's going to be a study, and I think that's a great step in the right direction.
Senator, I would agree a study needs to be done. A lot of the decrease is attributable to the large decrease in the number of landlines, as opposed to internet-type connections and cellular phones, and therefore the actual tax base is shrinking. So a study is certainly needed.
All right, thank you so much for your input on that issue. Let me just move on. The Police Patrol Vehicle and Equipment Revolving Fund is down just around $7,000 year to date. The Budget Act that we're in the substitute version is appropriating $345,000 from that fund for FY 2027 vehicle acquisition. Lester, can you confirm the fund balance and any collection trends to support that appropriation without a general fund backfill?
If you're going to use a special fund to be able to provide additional vehicles for public safety, I have no problem whatsoever with you doing that. We've augmented public safety with vehicles through ARP, through federal grants. That huge display of public safety vehicles that you were at Adelup is a testament to taking available resources and getting new vehicles for enhanced public safety awareness and visibility. So anything that can be done from a special fund standpoint that helps to keep vehicles on the road and the purchase of new vehicles is much appreciated.
Right, and you would probably agree you really can't grant yourself to update our modern public safety agency. It's just because of the kind of changing climate in Washington, D.C. So at least getting the fund in play, at least getting the appropriation should be helpful.
I agree with that 100%.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chair, I only have a couple more questions, and I know then I'll move on, but the Tourist Attraction Fund and the Guam Highway Fund are both behind their FY 2026 adopted levels by roughly $2.1 million and $1.2 million respectively. Are those estimates being revised downward for the new fiscal year, or is BBMR assuming a recovery? And if OFB wants to chime in, they can chime in too. What do you think?
If I'm not mistaken, OFB took the numbers from the EBR. Is that right, Steve? Yeah. So, again, those, I actually think that something that came into play here is the continuation for the liquid fuel tax abatement at the pump. So that was the primary funding source for the liquid fuel tax. But we're giving the people the break, and I'm very much appreciative of the body's continuation of that. So I think the two of us agreeing on that amount, I think it serves our purpose as well. And there are, we make really sure that the funding is towards the end of the fiscal year. If there's a request to do something, but let's say that the revenue for liquid fuel tax didn't come in, then we'll deny it. So we don't let people spend more than what is collected and what the balance is.
Were you going to jump in there, Steve, on the, do you think there's a recovery? Are we assuming a recovery here?
Given in my opening statement what I thought the economy would be like in FY27, I honestly believe that, since this is really not an increase, a great increase over FY26, I think the extra 12 months in the upcoming fiscal year would allow them to get back up to par to this level that they're requesting.
All right, thank you so much. Now, GVB was appropriated $28.9 million for FY 2026, including $3.2 million from the general fund and $25 million from the TAF. According to the May CRER and special funds report for that period ending May 31st, GVB spent $2.1 million of its general fund appropriation, and BBMR anticipates a TAF shortfall of $2,074,105, recognizing that GVB had attributed the higher than expected collection of $2.7 million or $200,000 above its projection of $2.5 million for May of 2026 to the Typhoon Sinlaku tax moratorium. Has BBMR recommended for the Visitors Bureau and other TAF supported entities to adjust their expenditures over the remaining 3 months of the fiscal year based on BBMR maintaining its position that the TAF collections will come up short by the end of September 2026?
There's been no formal, but we have made informal discussions with them that on that basis, the September normal monthly contribution to GVB would not be available.
Okay, thank you so much. Mr. Chair, that's all I have for this round. Thank you for the time.
Usmasi, Senator Gumatato. Senator Barnett, you recognize?
Mr. Chair, Biba Betness to the people of Guam, and thank you to the panel for being here. Frankly, I'm going to miss you guys in the later rounds as we get deeper into, this budget bill, because it's very clear. I've been here as a senator 3 years, and one thing I've learned about Mr. Guerrero is sometimes on the floor here he sounds like the 16th senator, but he's a lot like the genie in the lamp. He's got to serve whoever he's serving as the finance chair. So. I appreciate the difference in perspective here, and I just wish that we would have it as we get deeper into the budget bill. We start talking about some of the agencies. And it's also a little different to see you here this early in the year. As you know, the finance chair has publicly proclaimed that he intends to be done with his budget by July 17th. And I know that we have statutorily until the end of August to submit a budget. So, one of my colleagues down the line was talking about how much clearer of a picture would we have with the government finances. So I kind of want to start there. So we're in here, about a month earlier than we normally would be. If we were doing this budget in less of a rushed timeline, would we have a little bit of a clearer idea of where we are with the BPT, for example, and the impact of the rollback?
I don't believe that we're impaired by moving up budget discussions. We're able to give you the June numbers, and there's only a couple of three months left that we have yet to collect. But I think it sets the tone for where you can be with most of the revenues. And, again, OFB and BBMR agreeing on 98% of the revenues for general funds, special funds. I mean, that is indicative of a lot of our collective efforts. Again, the big monkey in the room really is the BPT. And if the BPT was at 4.5%, we would be done with revenues right now. So, there wouldn't be any discussion worth anything. And there wouldn't be anything that wasn't funded because you had the wherewithal to fund it. And as Mr. Guerrero said 4 different times, something had to fall out because the revenues went down. I mean, it's not, I'm glad that in the middle of what he said, he would always end his statement by saying, we're reducing the revenue. So honesty is prevailing on all fronts, but I don't believe that us convening now has any material disadvantage.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. And you're right, Mr. Guerrero did say several times that something has got to give. And, that's something that's got to give is this 2-page list of items to include, as you said, not $1 for Simon Sanchez High School construction leaseback, not $1 for DOC modernization, a very significant reduction in funds set aside to repair our village streets and our road resurfacing, even leaving those struggling with substance abuse addiction out in the cold by reducing their appropriation by $700,000. And it's clear, we said this in the last budget cycle, this BPT reduction was going to lead to an impact in services to those most vulnerable. And I think that's what we're seeing here is the majority is bending over backwards, doing backflips, trying to justify and make valid this BPT reduction when it's very clear, as Mr. Guerrero said, he wanted to give this money, but he simply couldn't because the priority of the colleagues was to reduce it 0.5% in the last fiscal year, and then another 0.5% coming off the top in this one with $40 million in a reduction of revenues. You know, some of the colleagues who supported the BPT reduction, they talk about how some of the arguments against it, and I disagree, were framed as the sky is falling. I think, for me, we haven't yet seen the true impact of the BPT reduction because we've got a lot of artificial inflation from the military buildup. But you see it. You see it in that we're not able to fund a lot of these critical items. You know, we didn't even set aside any money for the facilities and maintenance for the Guam Department of Education. So could you kind of speak to that? Well, the argument that we rolled back the BPT and here we are, we're flush with cash and everything's hunky-dory.
Let me approach that in a different manner. The chairman has been clear since last year that with the BPT rolled back to 4.5, that the 4% was coming this year. He's been abundantly clear on that. And I think what we're seeing here is the impact and the inability to fund some items. But let's be clear on one thing. This is just the highlights of what it is that's not funded. There is like 95% of the requirements of the government of Guam that are funded. We're only talking about a handful or so of agencies that are impacted by the availability of funds and maybe not providing it to the level of the executive budget request. I want to make sure that everybody understands there's a lot of good, but there's also some stuff that needs to get done. And I did take the time during, before you came on, sir, to provide to several of you the Simon Sanchez legislation. And it's on page 7, line 17. So you will see what it is that is authorized. So,
Mr. Carlson, I don't want to use up my time, but if you have the bill and you'd like to read the appropriate section.
well, I got to read it now. Boy, you sound like Sabina now. Want me to read?
You're going to fund 32 years.
Oh, not me.
That's cool.
Not me.
32 years, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
It's a change of heart up in you.
I'm not, that's what he wants. It's not me.
No, I'm saying from the body. That's a big change from when we roasted you down here.
You roasted me?
When you came to committee of the whole, it didn't happen.
So the section is on page 7 of Public Law 3722, and it says, any pledge or reservation authorized hereunder shall be valid and binding from the time the pledge or reservation is made, and shall be limited to the sum of $16,377,125 per year during the pre-development, construction, and leaseback period. Now, the section before it talks about the financing. It's 58D108 on page 6. Well, the financing is a 30-year term not to exceed 8.5%. So the financing term is 30 years, but then this section here allows for the pre-development and construction. So we read that as the 2 years that would ordinarily be covered by capitalized interest that I was trying to avoid paying, but this is the section that basically is being utilized to secure the bond proceeds that would be generated plus the $32 million.
Thank you, Mr. Carlson. On the Department of Corrections, so in the last budget cycle, I was able to successfully appropriate $5 million towards the construction of a new prison over the objections of the Chair of Public Safety. And there were indications made that that $5 million is still sitting in a bank account somewhere, but you had offered something different in that we've kind of begun moving forward on the construction of a new prison, because I'd like to appropriate another $5 million for that in this budget cycle if, you know, I get the support for it.
So, Mr. Byrne, in November of last year, took a look at the appropriations against the excess revenues and advised the governor that we should probably not entertain lapses because those lapses were indeed already spent. And so we have made a rule that we're not going to take the myriad of agencies that were given prior year authorization to tap lapses. So we're not entertaining the use of any lapses as a fiscal measure. And DOC had a $5 million appropriation, of which $1 million they could use for operations. They used that $1 million, but they're not able to touch the $4 million that was unspent because of this fiscal control that we have with regards to lapses. So the appropriation in 26 for DOC is to use the 25 lapses, and we're not allowing that. So they don't have any money.
So you had said that they were moving forward. What
Yes.
did you mean by that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that takes care of them having money, which they don't. So we did sit down and we have an agreement with the Department of Corrections to build right in front of where the domes are. There's a big open area there. It's level to provide a facility, not the modernization plan, which is kind of like expensive and certainly not within the authorization that the body passed for a lease back of $5 million a year. So we're trying to do something within the parameters of what was authorized by law.
So basically, no matter who builds Sanchez or who builds the new prison, we've got to pay for it, but we can't pay for it in this bill because we've chosen to prioritize the rollback of the BPT. I know we have a second round, but I have an amendment that would keep the BPT at 4.5% and redirect that funding towards $1,000 individual assistance grants per household for typhoon recovery or preparation. Now, should that amendment pass, and I hope it does, is it your opinion that we would have enough excess revenues to address all of the concerns on the punch list here, as well as things like new police cycles, more cycles for customs, et cetera?
I like where the speaker was going when he spoke earlier about monies that have not been appropriated in 26. That certainly, it's cash. We know it. We have it. This body is able to then, put on your crystal ball and fund stuff with the cash that we have now for 27. You can meet some of these needs that we have in 27 with the 26 cash. I'm not here to bust anybody's balls or to break glass or anything like that. It's we know what it is that we need, but there are other ways to be able to get there.
I'm not sure. Was that an answer?
It was to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll proceed to the second round.
I like the speaker.
Senator Talai, you're recognized.
Thank you. Can you just, again, Simon Sanchez, did you take 16 million? Was that utilized in the FY26? Where is that money?
Senator, the authorization in the 26 budget is for the governor to use her transfer authority. We don't have that lapses in the executive branch to be able to fund that, nor did we have it for the 9.3 million for the aviation fuel tax. So the answer is there's no funding in 26 for Simon Sanchez.
And that authorization was for leaseback, right? Not for pre-construction.
You have to take that holistically, ma'am. You need to be able to take into account what bond proceeds will be generated from the 30-year financing, and then, I mean, as the chairman said, I was fighting against the proposal. I didn't believe that it was appropriate, but you can't deny that it's authorized in law. So I kind of had to step back.
It was authorized but not appropriated, right? Because the transfer authority was for leaseback. Is that correct?
Well, it's also not awarded.
Right? Just yes or no, right?
It's not awarded, so therefore.
But there's no authority for 16 million for pre-construction right now. No appropriation.
No.
Correct. All right. And so, do you think the governor's authorized to, as the bill is, take 16 million and use it for Simon Sanchez from some source for pre-construction?
That source would be from executive branch agencies using her transfer authority, and she doesn't have the ability to do that. We don't have that much, quote-unquote, lapse.
What about an FY27?
I would prefer a cash appropriation.
Yeah, I'm not asking preference. I'm asking, is it technically possible? I want to know what we're looking at.
You're looking at a proposal that is predicated on getting $16 million a year for 32 years.
Sorry, what? Can you repeat that? I can't understand.
The proposal from the most qualified bidder is for 32 years of $16 million. We haven't awarded yet. It's still in protest, but should it get decided in his favor, that's what he's asking for.
That's not my question at all. My question is, you
need.
said that the law authorizes to pay 16 million for pre-construction, and I want to, or pre-something. What was the word you used? And I want to know, as the bill is written, do you believe that that's authorized? Can you guys use your transfer authority to pay that? To pay even 2 years of it?
No.
Why not?
We don't have...
I know for FY26 you don't have. I'm asking, are you authorized to?
There's nothing in here that authorizes the governor to do anything.
Well, you said in FY26 you're authorized to use transfer authority. You just don't have enough money. I'm asking you for FY27, as the language is written in this substitute bill, do you think, I want to know if the governor's going to be doing this without us even doing any action. Is that possible?
She would not do it. There's no authorization in the S bill. None.
All right. Then, and the DOC modernization was for 5 million. So the DOC 5 million and the GMH 20 million, those are from excess funds. So we've been told they're not going to get that money until the end of FY26. Are they going to get that money?
Once the audit for 26 substantiates that money is available.
The audit?
That's the way it was written, ma'am. Don't look at me.
So that will be definitely not by FY27. It will be done at the earliest November 2027.
Well, we're hoping that fiscal 26 will catch up, and it will be done by June.
In 2027?
In 2027, yeah.
Okay. So how are you able to go out for an RFP with the 5 million for DOC?
We're going to go out with the RFP, and if we need to be able to use interim funds, we will, but it would be nice to have the support of the body and an appropriation.
What do you mean by interim funds? What is that?
The governor does have some discretionary funds that she can utilize to facilitate the procurement, but that would only be the last resort. I mean, it doesn't look like we're doing anything to be able to move DOC and get the additional facilities. So sometimes you just have to, like, take a leap of faith.
What do you mean by discretionary funds? What is that?
Funds that she has discretion on.
Could you be more specific?
Yeah.
Is it transferred authority funds
No, it's
or
not transfer
federal
authority.
funds?
Federal funds.
All right, thank you. And the budget law for FY26 said we appropriated up to $10 million from FY25 excess revenues for the rainy day. Was any money deposited into the rainy day?
In fiscal 26, yes.
From that FY25 excess, the 10 million? How much? Because it says up to 10 million. It was weird.
Yes. In fiscal 26, we have been putting in the appropriate amount into the rainy day fund. Please recall that the rainy day fund has a ceiling, and we haven't yet reached the ceiling, but now we've also used some of the rainy day fund, so we're having to top it up a little bit more. But we do put in every month the amount to make up the appropriation.
All right, so there's no provision like this in this bill? What's the effect of that?
If there's no provision, there's no input to the rainy day fund.
Is that what you believe the subs bill has no provision for rainy day fund?
Yes.
All right.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected. There's a 6.8 which was predicated on reaching the ceiling of the rainy day fund.
And will we reach the ceiling?
We will reach the ceiling, except now the two bills have appropriated some money for typhoon. One bill plus one prospective bill has appropriated money to typhoon use, which would reduce the rainy day fund.
Right, so are we going to reach the ceiling?
Well,
if we've taken money out?
No, if you take money out, you're coming below the ceiling.
But we took it out already, right, for the typhoon?
It's appropriated, but not much has been spent.
Okay. Recently, the governor announced paying a $5 million child care subsidy to make up for the federal loss. Where did that come from? What's the source?
We're expecting that child care subsidy will be, and it's not been paid out yet. We're in the process of paying it out. It would come from federal funds, which unfortunately we haven't received.
Federal funds? She said she was going to subsidize the loss of the federal funds.
Yes, we're expecting that federal funds will eventually be transferred for it.
Okay, and then in one of the recent public hearings, Ms. Byrne, you said that you were going to, the administration was going to address teacher pay raises, and then that you were going to do, I think, a 22% across the board for the rest of the employees. And in the EBR, there was a request for a study, money for a Hay study, but that's been taken out by this sub-bill. But my understanding of your testimony at that time was that you had already done the studies, especially for the teacher pay. Is that correct?
This is the situation, Senator, right? So we have a cycle of doing studies now. So we started out with law enforcement, then teachers, then the general pay plan, and then attorneys. So we started that cycle again, and we started to look at law enforcement, and we are going to be looking at the other categories during the course of the year. Of course, you will have to decide whether there's enough money in this budget to fund whatever pay increases the study produces.
Is that correct? Because we didn't have to do that last time. And in fact, isn't it true that the law enforcement have already been increased?
We've recently increased
Customs?
Customs.
Yes.
But
So
not-
you didn't need any authority from us. You've already done that.
Customs already had enough money in it, but I'm talking about fiscal 27, which you now see is some of these agencies have got restricted funds. Will there be enough money in those restricted funds to pay for the pay increases?
All right. I thought you made it sound like the teacher pay raises were also going to be done the same way. You've already done the study, and if you can find money, you're going to pay those prior to August 1st.
No, we haven't done the study.
For the teachers?
No.
22%?
I don't think
General pay plan? Has there been a study done?
22% was the previous
Yes.
increase.
Was there a study done for the general?
Yes, that was a study that
No, now,
produced...
another one, a new cycle, like you said.
Yes.
You've done it already?
No, we've not done that yet.
Okay. So are we expecting any pay increases besides customs between now and August 1st?
August, no, not between, it's only a few days, no.
All right. The GEFF, the Guam Educational Facilities Fund, was increased. I don't know who can answer this, maybe OFB, but it seems to be decreased from FY26. But we're expecting a new tax evaluation to be implemented for FY27, correct? Or in tax year 27. So, yeah, why would that be decreased and not increased?
Give me 1 second, Senator.
It's your last question, Senator. Your time's up.
Yes, Senator. The reason why it's really not tracking now is because, again, remember the extension of the real property tax from February to April is now December 31st. That will anticipate some payers to probably pay next fiscal year in FY27. However, we still feel that based on the tracking, it would still track the same level, and we coincide and agree with BBMR's number.
All right, BBMR, you did not track that the new revaluation would bring in more for the GEFF?
So you can answer that, and then we'll go to Senator Paris. Your time is up, Senator July.
I'm not aware of a new valuation being sent out.
Yes, the director's here.
You can concur in the second round afterwards. Yeah. Senator Paris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple questions. You mentioned, Lester Carlson, that the school leases for those 4 schools will end of October this year, is that correct?
No, at the end of fiscal 27.
Okay, so that would be October 20, or September 30th, 2027. Okay, gotcha. Okay, and then regarding the ARPA funds, that were actually used for or sent to DPW. Can you confirm how much was given to DPW for roadway construction?
A little over $20 million.
Wasn't it increased? I thought there was a news article that they increased that amount.
I said a little over 20 million.
Just a little over, okay. And then, according to the audit, public auditor's recommendation was that there seems to be a disconnect in regards to deadlines. So as far as the federal grants go, according to his recommendation, because there was a lack of oversight in ensuring that, I guess there wasn't a particular agency that was appointed to oversee the deadlines of federal grants. So he recommended that it be overseen by BBMR. Given your budget, your proposed budget, is your staff, do you have enough capacity to do this?
With the current budget, yes, we do. As a matter of fact, when we are tapping federal grants for any particular agency, we have the grant agreement. We know what the conditions of the grant are. We know what does and what doesn't need grantor approval. Like some agencies need to get grantor approval to do any budget modifications to move money around. Some people don't, but we've been successfully managing federal grants for many, 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 many years.
Okay. You stated earlier that we are tracking to collect how much over the adopted levels of the last budget? If you can repeat that.
$88 million.
88 million, okay. So the last report that we received, if you subtract all the obligations, it comes out to $39,643,184. So what numbers has, what is the update to that as far as net unobligated projected 26 general fund revenue?
For the purposes of discussion, we only went and are providing the body with what the general fund collections are. We haven't gone through the exercise of netting out what the potential shortfalls are for the special funds. So we haven't done that exercise yet with the $88 million. We did it for the May CRER, but we haven't had the time to do that. We just wanted to give you guys an idea of where we're tracking now.
Okay, so if you were to estimate it, have we increased what we're supposed to be subtracting considerably?
No, I think we should be decreasing, not increasing.
Okay, so then roughly it's about 65 million of unobligated funds?
I would have to take the time to look at what it was that we netted out and what the property tax remittances are, because that's the biggest item that we're taking into account. But as the year goes on and people are paying their property taxes, knowing that they have till December, that number will go down.
Okay, thank you. We're talking about lapse funds. So in the past, I guess we're weaning off this practice of continuing use of lapse funds. So how do you I guess, treat them, as in this particular budget, that if there are no continuing use of lapse funds, how do you categorize them?
We have been very consistent in our messaging to the agencies that lapses are not available, so you take that off the table, just use your current year appropriation.
So the money that we appropriate now becomes, what do you call them?
You're not appropriating money when you appropriate lapses because you don't actually understand what it is that the agency lapsed. You're just giving them the courtesy to be able to do it because the number's not there. It's just whatever you lapsed.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, so we want to appropriate the money, so how do we refer it as?
If you want to appropriate lapse funds?
Yeah, the funds that are no longer available, because we did appropriate in the last budget, but now it's available. So how do you categorize that?
As a no-go?
No, do you call it unobligated funds? Do you call it, what do you call it? Maybe Director Byrne, he looks like he wants to state.
Thank you for that question. I want to make it really clear that a lapse fund, which is the difference between an appropriation and an expenditure, doesn't create any cash. It's just a difference. The only thing that creates cash is the difference between revenues and expenditures. If revenues are more than expenditures, that's a budget, that's a surplus, that's cash. A lapse fund is just a lapse fund. There's no cash associated with it, and that's why the recommendation is not to appropriate it.
Okay, but after this fiscal year ends, the agency doesn't use up all their funds, and now would we refer it as general fund then, if we want to appropriate it within this budget?
No, the amount that falls into the general fund is the surplus. The lapse is, it's a budgetary technique. It's not an accounting entry. And therefore, there's no cash associated with it.
Okay. On page 79 of the budget, in your section, Director Byrne, there is a reference to the Realign study. What is your understanding of that?
Did you, page 79?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Senator. You're talking about page 79 of the bill?
Sorry, I'm sorry, wrong number. Maybe it's in your section of the bill, if you can find. $76.
This is an appropriation?
Correct. So have you heard of this before? This section?
I've read it. You know, we've had the bill for about 2 days, so.
Okay, what is your understanding? Were you briefed on this?
No, I can only read what it is here, that these are general fund appropriations to different different departments or expenditures. And in paragraph 16 is an appropriation to the DOA to pay GIDA for some services. So that will result in a check going to GIDA for those services.
Okay, and you weren't briefed on this particular thing?
No.
Okay. Okay, and then the other thing is tax income refund report. Do you see any correlation between what is filed and what is collected? And this can go both to DOA as well as to DRT.
So I'm sorry, your question is returns filed versus what's collected?
Yeah, because it's kind of concerning on the last tax refund report. It reduced from 2024 was 72,379 filers, and then in 2025 it's 46,966. So it definitely, I know, is there any issue or any concerns with that? And is there a correlation between the number filed and the amount collected?
So the report that you refer to, that's actually as of a certain time. So, you know, it's only the refunds. So what you would be comparing it to in 2024, 2024 would be total year. And then what the smaller number that you're looking at is just only up to a certain month. So it might be May, I think, is what you're looking at. We just recently
yes,
sent.
That's correct. Yeah.
We just recently sent the speaker the report today for June.
Oh, okay.
So, and that shows higher. So, you know, of course, as the months go by, then we expect it to kind of be right around the same number as the previous year. And is there a correlation between what's filed and, you know, what actually is collected? You know, that number can vary because people can file the returns or perhaps come into some sort of, you know, payment plan, or on their own they decide to kind of just pay what they can. You know, and then converse, or on the other side, you can also file file an extension. Certainly, it's not indicative of an extension to pay, but you know, the number of filers, and I'm sorry I don't have that in front of me, but the number of people who would have filed by the extended tax deadline to be able to complete their returns, you know, that of course we know is not going to happen until the October 15 deadline. So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you
You're
for
welcome.
that. And then the question regards to, this is for OFB. On page 89, Mr. Guerrero. Yeah, page 89 of the budget bill.
We're in the revenues.
This is DOC.
You can ask just about DOC in the revenues, but we're not in that chapter yet.
Oh, because the panel's here. Oh, because he's going to be here.
He'll be here
Okay.
until we're done.
Okay. Okay, that's fine then.
OFB will be here.
But I guess the amount, again, can I ask about the amount right now?
Just what does it reflect in the revenues? What's your question?
Just basically, has this already been encumbered for the software as a service agreement? And how long is this program for?
If you're talking about the amount that's in the bill right now, whether that's been encumbered,
Yeah, how long is this service agreement for?
oh, that I would have to check, but this is the amount that they're asking for the payment in 27.
Okay. And then, okay, the question I have for DOA. So we went through a oversight hearing with the airport, and they stated that they requested, I guess, an appropriation. Otherwise, they may violate the bond covenants. And I noticed that this is not included in this bill. Is there an appropriation, a bill that has been sent down to address that?
That's your last question, Senator. You're out of time.
Yeah, at Senator Lujan's request, the governor's office is drafting the bill. It has not yet been sent to Senator Lujan, but it should be in the coming days to address. I mean, there seemed to be overwhelming support at the oversight hearing, so the bill will be forthcoming.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Parkinson, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just thank you, gentlemen, for coming in today. I just want to bottom line some of this, because we're not really debating an abstract tax rate. We are deciding whether a 4% BPT budget actually funds the government's known obligations, or whether it creates predictable shortfalls in the schools, in vulnerable services, retirees, residential treatment, and public safety. So I want clear yes or no answers where possible. My first question is, at a 4% BPT, compared to the EBR built around 4.5%, how much less recurring revenue is available for FY 2027?
You want a yes or no?
Where possible. This one I need a figure.
Just trying to be cooperative here.
Yeah.
It looks like 44 million.
44 million.
Yeah, 43, 44.
So if we keep the BPT at 4%, the government has tens of millions less in recurring revenue, correct?
If it goes down to 4%, yes.
Is the administration's position that the 4% substitute underfunds known FY 2027 obligations?
Could you repeat that?
Is it the administration's position that the 4% substitute bill underfunds known FY 2027 obligations?
Yes.
There has been confusion about Simon Sanchez. Under this substitute at 4% BPT, is the Sanchez rebuild fully funded for the next year required FY 2027 payment or project obligation?
There is no funding. The Simon Sanchez is only referenced on page 26 and 27 in reporting requirements. There's no appropriation whatsoever.
Does that mean that the Sanchez rebuild is delayed, put at risk, or dependent on a later supplemental?
It could be the last one.
So I think the public deserves a little bit of clarity. So just for clarity, under a 4% BPT, is Sanchez fully protected, or are we gambling with the rebuild?
I don't know how to answer that other than to say that what has been discussed, and as the chairman mentioned, debated, ultimately was accepted by the negotiating team. So they accepted the 32 years.
Okay, the administration identified about 1.8 million reduction to DSID versus the EBR request. Will that affect in-home care stipends or adult daycare center programs?
You know, after the EBR was sent, we had a fire alarm, five-alarm fire alarm from DSID because this program, the in-home care, is actually skyrocketing because there's just a lot of residents that have care needs that is being provided by a relative in the house. So they're taking that stipend. But we didn't understand the amount of participation until the funding that was provided in 26 ran out. And it ran out maybe, what, after December?
It ran out in February.
February. Yeah. So, you know, we had to take some steps to be able to provide funding so that that program would continue, and the benefits to the relatives taking, participating in the in-home care program, could still be sustained. So yes, it's a very popular program for all the right reasons, and it requires additional funding.
So this BPT is not just a tax reduction, it is a service reduction for these vulnerable residents in that capacity.
As Mr. Guerrero said, the costs are going up. Well, again, my sense is that the cost for the contractors to provide these services, because if you look at the list that we provided to you, there are a number of service providers that we're not talking about operations of the agencies. We're talking about the services provided that the body has already authorized and basically funded. If those costs go up, which they inherently do, then that drives up the requirement for appropriation for the legislature. So we do need that to sustain the existing services that we've already engaged in.
The administration also identified about 2.27 million reduction to COLA versus the EBR. Does the substitute fund COLA at the level of actual payout need, or are we coming up short here?
Mr. Guerrero said he spoke to the retirement fund more recently than we did. If the retirement fund has given updated information to OFB versus the information that we got in January, that could be the case. And he said that he talked to him more recently than I did. So if that number comes down and that conversation isn't disputed, then I think we'll be okay.
Okay. If it is not, will payouts be delayed, prorated, or will we require a supplemental?
Possibly a supplemental.
Because, yeah, one of the things that has come up in this discussion is that there is an increase over FY 2026. And so I just wanted to be clear that more than 2026 does not necessarily mean adequately funded. The real question is whether it meets the actual payout requirements, and that's something to think about moving forward. The administration also identified about $778,000 reduction to supplemental annuity benefits versus the EBR. Does the 4% budget fully fund the expected 2027 payout for supplemental annuity benefits?
Same response to COLA, sir. Mr. Guerrero probably spoke to retirement fund more recently than we did for the EBR. And if the number of participants, in the supplemental annuity has gone down, then the funding should be adequate. Should that conversation still be accurate?
And if it's not, we're going to be back in here for a supplemental.
Yes, sir.
The administration identified about $700,000 reduction to the residential treatment fund. If that fund is short, what happens to the people who need placement?
I feel like every 3 months, we get a knock on the door for payment for residential treatment fund. The capacity on island was increased because the need was there. And it's not a need that we want to ignore, because these are people with they're very much at risk. They need the care, and we need to provide that as a community. So if there's one thing that Mr. Byrne and I have to deal with on a very frequent basis is supplemental funding for residential treatment fund, finding money outside of the appropriations. If we can shift money, we do. But it would be really nice to have an appropriation that was sufficient, where we are actually taking care of it on the front end.
Okay, but so if that money isn't there, do they remain in the hospital? Do they get sent back to their families? Or do they get put into the crisis systems like the courts or law enforcement or emergency rooms? I'm just trying to get a sense of what happens to these people.
The laddie treatment basically has to do with people with some serious challenges. So they would not be, once they're in that system, you really don't want to take them out of the system because they need that care.
Senator, most of the residential treatment fund goes to pay for patients who are off island. They're in treatment facilities for treatment that we can't offer on island. And that treatment cost goes up each year. In addition to that, from time to time we get an additional patient that's sent off island under a court order to receive the treatment, supposedly, or not supposedly, I should say, generally under the assumption that it's going to be for a time period, but it's very, very rare for these patients to be returned back to Guam. We have tried to get the states where their treatment is being provided to pay for this under their state Medicaid, and generally they've refused.
So underfunding residential treatment doesn't eliminate the cost, it just moves the crisis somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
The administration has stated that reductions to DOC, GPD, GFD, and DYA will affect operations, training cycles, contracts like the NG 911 and DYA vacancies. Is that an accurate portrayal of what will happen?
You know, we believe that to take the training cycles and cut the funding in half. I understand what Mr. Guerrero said, and there's a bit of logic to what he said. If October 1st rolls around and we don't have the sufficient number of candidates over at DOA to be able to initiate a cycle, and we have to wait for the candidate pool to be, sufficiently filled so that we can then, start doing the testing. Because if I'm not mistaken, it's a written test first, and then the agility and the physical test comes afterwards. But if we do have the pool ready, and we can effectuate the cycle quicker in the fiscal year, then the funding requirement is that much more greater than what is being reflected here in the S bill.
Yeah, because one of my concerns is, especially for agencies like GFD that are have significant age in them, we need to continue the pipeline of new firefighters, new LEOs, new public safety officers, and so, that just doesn't really jive with what I hear with some of these agencies having applications for recruits a mile long. And so I really don't like the idea of our recruitment cycles being cut down. Under the 4% substitute, are all planned GPD cadet cycles, recruit cycles, and DOC training cycles fully funded?
I believe Mr. Guerrero answered that, and he said that it's funded at basically half the cost because, again, if there isn't a sufficient candidate pool, I don't disagree that, it's going to take some time to be able to get the candidates, but I'm not sure whether or not 6 months is appropriate, 9 months is appropriate, or a full year is appropriate, but I would like to err on the side of caution and not reduce the funding level.
Thank you, Senator. That's your time. Appreciate it. Senator Montanani, you're recognized at this time.
Thank you. Before I get into agency-specific questions, I wanted to go over some of the numbers. Correct, $88 million was projected when the June CRER comes out. That's what we're tracking in excess revenue?
Yes.
Could be more than 100 million by the end of the fiscal year?
It could be.
What was the exact number you mentioned?
Pardon me?
The number you had mentioned, 102, I wasn't able to write that down.
I didn't say a number for 100.
You said just over 100 million?
No, I didn't. I said 88 million is what it is that we're doing.
Was it you, Steve?
I believe it could be.
Yeah, I was just referencing what the speaker was adding up in his numbers. He did come out to 102.
Okay. And we're looking at $18.3 million in lapses. That's what you were mentioning.
Based on our projected lapses as of May, yes.
Okay. If you could please answer, because I'm concerned about the issues that BBMR raised regarding public health and this $3.9 million reduction. And OFB has mentioned that, well, we've spoken to the Department of Public Health and Social Services, and they said that they were okay with the proposed numbers and appropriations in the substitute bill. But I'm getting messages from the Department of Public Health, the director herself, who said that they're not okay with this reduction. And let me just pull it up so that we're clear here. Public health is not okay with $3 million reduction as proposed in budget bill. Reduction will be from Medicaid, which I've stated we will surely reach the cap. So if you could tell us, who were you speaking to at public health?
Because he's a government employee. This is his job. I believe his title is the Chief Financial Officer, Joaquin Blas.
Joaquin Blas gave you that information.
Yes.
And you trust that the information that he relayed to you that public health is okay.
If it was another person other than Mr. Blas, Senator, I might question it. But this is a gentleman I told you, worked with him. I know him. I know his professionalism. I know his integrity. I know his work ethics. I know his experience. And yes, I would rely 100% on what he has told me as being true.
Okay. As for the Guam Memorial Hospital, I'm hearing back from them that their appropriation is $20 million short. Can you explain that? What they're receiving? And why they would say that?
I'm gonna assume that when you say their appropriation is $20 million short, bear in mind they asked for $50 million over the current ceiling.
I'm sorry. It's 21 million below their ask.
Again, departments are going to come in and they're going to ask like a wish list. We can only afford to appropriate so much. I believe in the case of public health, GMH, I think we did appropriate $5 million. $5 million more this year to them over their FY26 level.
Senator, I understand the concerns. We can get the detailed breakdown when we get to the chapter for GMH, but I understand you're asking that in revenues, but however, we will get to the detail when we get to that chapter to show exactly how we did the breakdown of the appropriation and what claim they're making.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question about Guam Behavioral Health and Wellness Center because this was brought up by BBMR and Senator Duenas, who did issue a press release. So I wanted to ask OFB regarding what conversations, who you spoke to regarding the final number that they were appropriated.
We spoke directly to the Administrative Service Officer, who is I believe, the financial person that oversees JIPWIC's accounts.
You believe or is?
I'm assuming she is the financial.
And name?
She's the ASO officer normally responsible for the oversight of departments and agencies' financials.
The name, please?
And we also spoke with the director, but the lady, let me try to get the lady's name, ASO.
So you spoke with the director, Carissa Pangilinan, regarding the final number, the final appropriation that they are receiving.
Yes, Senator. I believe the correspondence with the budget analyst was directly to the director, Clarissa Pangilinan.
Thank you.
We had talked about this 20 million going to DPW regarding village street repairs, correct? ARP money. Is that from the 100 that's being re-obligated from the hospital?
Yes, ma'am. Due to continued resistance from a bunch of people, we needed to look at other eligible obligations that were incurred before December 31st of 2024 and use our best efforts to get these monies spent as opposed to returning federal funds. So yes, we took that step.
And what other agencies received money from that 100 million that was being re-obligated, returned?
We always intended that GWA and GPA would be the primary recipients. So GWA has stepped up and has found eligible contracts that were incurred before December of 2024 that would be eligible for us to fund. So primarily DPW and GWA.
How much to GWA?
Minimum of 40 and potentially as high as 61, which is in line with what we were going to give them initially. We were going to give GPA like 35 million and GWA about 63 million.
What about GMH?
We're working on doing something for GMH to the tune of about $10 million.
You're working on it? Do you anticipate that, you know, they will receive that money?
We got contracts from them. We reviewed the contracts. They appear to be eligible. I believe that we're following through, and we are going to work with them and provide the funding to them.
When do you have to make a final determination on that $10 million?
I think the determination, we've already agreed. It's just we have to de-obligate the funds from where they're currently obligated, and then we have to basically establish a new account to be able to provide it to everybody, but more specifically GMH, because they weren't in the mix initially. So that kind of stuff takes a little bit of time, but certainly we'll get them the money well in advance of their need to be able to fund the stuff that we're helping them with.
Okay. Well, that sounds like good news that they will get that $10 million, because I remember
Yes,
when we had the first informational briefing, they were anticipating the $20 million, and then all of a sudden, $10 million was gone and was wiped out and went to the new hospital, and they had no idea, and they had already started issuing the RFPs, and I believe they even signed some contracts. So I hope
That was an unfortunate miscommunication, because that was communicated directly to the administrator. It just didn't get transmitted to the staff.
And if you could, there was a question from a previous speaker regarding the child care development funds and how I know there was a media release from the governor's office that $5 million was going to be paid to these daycare facilities. Mr. Byrne, what was the funding source? Because I wasn't really clear if it was federal funds, if it was local funds. Where did that money come from?
Well, we are expecting federal funds to be available. So we're using what funds we have. Right? It's like a transfer until we get the federal funds. And we're
if you could just, is it local funds or not?
I beg your pardon?
Were local funds used?
Well, they haven't been used yet because we haven't paid it. We're in the process of
So they
paying
have.
it out.
So daycare facilities have not been paid at all.
We received the daycare batches on July 3rd from Public Health, and we're processing them now, and we're expecting to pay them out on Monday.
Okay, because the press release was sent out on June 30th, and it says Governor Lulian Guerrero directs $5 million in local funds to protect child care providers and families amid federal funding delays.
That is correct.
So they have not received anything to date.
That was the total amount. We got the detail, because the press release doesn't tell you who they're going to pay. It's something like 300 different childcare providers. We got the information. I'm told by my staff, because I anticipated a question like this, did we get the detail back up? We got it yesterday. We're processing it today, so it'll be paid out. This is April and May, will be paid out on Monday.
Right, I'm just saying that this press release was issued on June 30th, like, look everybody, we came in to save the day, but you're saying as of today, they haven't been paid?
The day will be saved on Monday.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll save the day on Monday. Senator Borja, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the panel for being here. Not sure who to ask. Just to clarify again with labs funding, because we did a lot of amendments I remember last budget session, allowing a lot of agencies. So again, just for the record, any labs funding, at least for the line agencies or the executive branch agencies, after the fiscal year ends, that money is pretty much gone. So even if we gave them $100 and they spent $50 this year, where does the $50 go if the direction is that you don't have that $50 anymore? I'm just curious where all that money goes, because I mean, it was like in the millions last year, at least on what we were estimating that lapsed.
It doesn't really go anywhere. Like I was explaining in answer to Senator Perez, right? It's just a difference between an appropriation and an expenditure. It doesn't affect the financials. It doesn't create any cash. It's just, unfortunately, disappears.
But if we, in the revenue, said that we were going to get 300 million, and we put it out in the budget that we were going to spend 300 million, and the CRE report said that we got 300 million as we were tracking the revenues, then where does the, I mean, I guess I'm confused, like you're saying.
That's a different, that's a revenue match with expenditure. It's not an appropriation match with expenditure. Revenues are real money. Revenues generate cash, and out of that cash comes expenditures. And if you spend less than the revenues you've received, you report a surplus. If you spend more than the revenues received, you report a deficit.
But if it was appropriated, but it wasn't spent, I get what you're saying though, but if it was appropriated and was never spent.
The appropriation is a budgetary device. It's a number. It doesn't affect the balance sheet.
Okay, I guess we can talk later. Steve, with the projected lapses, how much is GDOE right now, at least in their banking? What's in their bank account from what you guys see, and how much are they projected to lapse? Because I know what there's projected, or what is in their bank account right now should lapse because they supposedly can't spend that money right now.
Senator, first of all, I don't have access to their financial bank account number kind of thing. Second of all, as far as the May CR report, they're showing no lapses. However, in the EFSC report that they produce monthly, they're showing a total of 5.7 million lapsing.
Okay. DOA, Mr. Byrne, with the charter schools, I know the way their appropriations or their funding comes through, where does their money go? Does it go into, are they like GDOE where when when they submit their invoices and or when the money is appropriated, does it go into a bank account, or does it stay in a general fund until you guys pay their invoices?
It's part of the general fund. When we get their invoices, we just pay them direct to the schools. So it's just a straight cash transfer.
So right now with their request to, is it the same situation for them if the fiscal year ends and they're requesting for their lapses, is their money gone as well?
Well, it could be. They have certain restrictions, right? First of all, it's based upon their expenditures, but it's also based upon their enrollment. And if their enrollment falls below the budgeted enrollment, yes, there would be a lapse.
Okay. So I guess I'm still confused. So right now, they're projected to lapse 4 million. How would we know or determine what that amount would be? Would it be based on what their enrollment is and what they report to you at the end of September, or?
Yes. Actually, compared with most other appropriations, it's kind of easier to measure because there are no trailing invoices. We get a request from them to pay, and then we're required, unless we have a really good reason, to pay it in 10 days. So it's a really quick turnover. The issue with agencies is that when we close the year, we have to wait for them to submit their invoices, and some of them are better than others at submitting their invoices, to know what the real expenditure is for that year. But for the charter schools, actually, it's pretty clean.
I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Bora. Senator Lohan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, panel, for being here this afternoon as well. Steve, it's been said many times today, or this afternoon actually, that the June CRER is tracking around 88 million surplus. Given, of course, the special fund shortfall coverage and appropriations bills, would it be safe to say that we're going to net approximately maybe 40 plus million?
Just to clarify, Senator, again, the 88 million that you're referring to is based on the June CER report.
Yes.
I have not seen it. I have not been privy to it, other than the fact of the information that was provided today. But doing the math, during the math that you're saying, that yeah, you take the 80 less the obligated of 24, plus the 895,000 for the legislature's thing, you will roughly come up with about $40 million lapses.
Okay.
Based on.
Okay, based on that. Okay, and that being said, if we're tracking over, wouldn't it be that we have met the EBR's request then? And would it be able to fulfill all the obligations stated by my colleagues here this afternoon that supposedly will suffer because of the BPT reduction? Mr. Guerrero?
Well, adding up, again, the items that were on Mr. Carlson's list, that totaled up to about 43 million.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the 40 million that would be available, I would say you'll be short by 3 million, but I think it would be more than adequate to cover the majority of those items on that list.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. And actually, you know, I wish that we were growing the economy as fast as this government is spending and growing as well. So I'm going to ask you a few more questions that require just simple answers, okay? Do you agree that when the Guam's private sector prospers, that government revenues will also grow?
That's logical, yes.
Okay. Do you also agree that sustainable revenue growth should come from maybe more businesses, more jobs, more investment, economic activity, rather than higher taxes on families and employers?
Yes.
Thank you. Do you agree that lowering the cost of doing business makes Guam more competitive and gives local businesses greater capacity to hire, invest, and expand?
Yes.
Do you also agree that tourism's continued failure to rebound represents a serious threat to Guam's economy, its workforce, small businesses, and government revenues?
Yes.
You also agree that a weak visitor arrivals directly reduces revenues for the Guam International Airport Authority and place added pressure on its financial position and bond obligations?
Yes.
Do you also agree that lower visitor arrivals also affect customs-related collections and funding available to support the Guam Customs and Quarantine Agency?
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. And, you know, I just wish that we were, again, here talking more about economic prosperity and growth, like we did, of course, with CQA and the leakage that they had of over 150 million annually in 50-year leases and things like that, except we're talking about the growth of government and expenditures. That being said, my last question, to you, Mr. Guerrero, given these risks, this question I had, given these risks, why is the administration focused on defending higher government spending instead of advancing a credible plan to restore tourism, grow the private sector, and broaden Guam's revenue base?
Senator, I think that's a question that you need to ask the administration.
I'm asking you is because we've been working together and we've been discussing this, and we know the answers to that. And it's just troubling that again, we're here and looking at the growth of government and expenditures, and we're seeing businesses close down. I don't know if people realize, but almost all the hotels are up for sale.
Senator, given the question you posed to me,
Well, thank you very much. I think it's more of a statement I'm trying to make. But again, it's frustrating sitting here and we're looking at the government growth and expenditures, and yet we have the economy, we have the private sector that is suffering, people leaving the island for greener pastures. And what are we doing to keep them here? What are we doing to keep business here? Entice businesses to come here, so we can continue this over $1 billion budget that this government has. And that's the bothersome thing about this, is that we're not, the source of money that's coming in, we're not equalizing that with the government expenditures. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Masi, Senator Lujan. Senator Ada, you're recognized at this time, Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. Director Lizama, what is our status on the property tax collection?
We've gone out with, well, as was mentioned earlier, collection, or people are allowed to pay their taxes until December 31. In the meantime, in preparation for tax year 2026, what we've done is we've gone out with an RFP, and in fact, there's a deadline which was just kind of extended for any questions to be entertained. And you know, once we do that, the RFP will address a preliminary tax roll as well as a billing system. And so once we do that, then of course the preliminary tax roll is scheduled to be released on September 1. And then, let's see here, there's an appeal period for values presented from September 15 to October 15. And then the Board of Equalization, after all appeals are heard and addressed, will vote to certify on October 31.
I see. And how much has been collected so far from property taxes from those that have been allowed to?
I'm sorry, I don't have that number in front of me, but I spoke to Director Byrne earlier about you know, what was showing in the transaction process system, and I think he has a figure.
Vice Speaker, it's reported in the special funds report, and through May, it's about 14 million.
14 million?
Yes, sir.
And what is our anticipated, what was our last total collections from?
The expected amount in Public Law 3860 was 35.8 million.
35.8 million? Yeah. All right.
But there are, as Director Lizama mentioned, there's a reconciliation we have to do between her records and DOA records, and we're in the process of doing that.
All right. So by January, then the new tax, the tax roll should be able to go out and people be able to pay their property taxes.
We're anticipating September 1
September
for the
1st?
preliminary tax roll.
Right.
Yes.
And then you said
then there's a period where you know, the taxpayers would be able to appeal, and then it'll be addressed, or and then the Board of Equalization will certify that. October 31.
All right. So we're still looking at about maybe about 21 million that still needs to be collected for this year, right?
Yes.
For property taxes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Director Byrne, my colleague asked earlier if there's any anticipated pay raises between now and August 1st. Is there any anticipated pay raises between now and September 30th?
I think that would be ambitious on our part. Unfortunately, you know, although we had planned to do these on a more regular cycle, recent events have rather interrupted DOA's activities, and we've had to concentrate more on typhoon recovery. So I don't think so.
So there will be no additional pay raises between now and September 30th?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Susmanisi, Vice Speaker Ada. Senator Calvo, you recognize at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to address OFB. He stepped out. Okay. I'll circle back. DRT. How much uncollected tax revenue remains outstanding and what percentage is realistically collectible?
So you're probably you're referring to the accounts receivable amount?
That's correct.
And so that is something, and we've been in discussion, I know, with some of the senators with regard to this, and in particular, I believe Senator Terlahi has asked one of our staff about that. That is a moving, it's a fluid figure, you know, and that's because people come in, they make payments. It's not, unless you're taking a snapshot in time, you know, there's you know, it's going to be a different amount each time, and that's because people come in on a daily basis to pay what is their outstanding tax liability, you know, and so forth. And so I know that I mean, and I'm sorry I don't have it in front of me, but I know that the last time there was an amount, and on top of that, it would have the penalties and the interest. I want to say it is about $200 million. However, as I mentioned, that is inclusive of penalties and interest, and so the figure is, the true tax liability is not, you know, is not that total amount. Please excuse me if I don't have that actual figure in front of me, but that is something that we work to update. And please also note that that figure includes, and I believe I mentioned this at the SCS hearing, our collection branch is in charge of that. And they are right now at about 50% staffed. So that figure likely includes any statute of limitation cases that need to be wiped from the books. Now, I know that I was asked why we still continue to show that, and the truth is we just don't have enough staff right now to go through and clean all of that up. But we are working on that on a daily basis. The tax enforcement administrator, who is in charge of collection, you know, has brought some of those statute of limitation cases, you know, to my office, you know, and so forth. So we continue it, and again, it sounds like a huge amount, but just remember that it includes that issue. It also includes, again, the penalties and the interest, which in some cases could even be larger than the tax liability itself.
Thank you. Since you mentioned about understaffing, could additional technology investments reduce administrative costs to help alleviate your process while improving tax compliance?
With regard to collection, you know, I don't work in that area. I don't actually do the actual work. I know that some of it involves analyses. And so, you know, perhaps, you know, modernization in certain areas, sure, it can help. But for some of these things, you actually have to have a person actually take a look at the individual cases and, you know, just where it is that they can work with the person who owes taxes and so forth. And, you know, they also work with some of the other departments with regard to, you know, the overall tax liability.
Different note. What industries currently present the highest risk of tax non-compliance?
I would actually say alcohol, probably. You know, that's my personal opinion. We currently have laws that govern tobacco. However, with regard to alcohol, there is no, you know, just it's different. It doesn't have such legislation or yeah, just legislation with regard to that actual subject. But tobacco, for example, tobacco would come in and it is stored at bonded warehouses. And if there are withdrawals to be made, then there is a check and balance process. It is, you have someone from DRT go over to the wholesalers area, and then you have somebody from the wholesalers area present as well. And then there is, again, a check and balance with regard to what is being withdrawn and so forth. So alcohol does not have that same process.
Does DRT anticipate greater volatility in general fund revenues following the reduction of the BPT?
Well, okay, of course, yes, right? We're going to, we've had many discussions with regard to the impact of the rollback. And, you know, our agency has typically just complied. You know, we do our best. BPT is one of those areas that I've mentioned before, is also sorely understaffed. Although I have to admit, and I'm pleased to advise that we have added a couple of personnel to that branch, and to include having an actual dedicated supervisor there. So there are things that we're trying to work with, given that, you know, I mean, if the rollback does go back or does indeed stay and go down to 4%, then our staff is simply just going to have to comply and probably just tighten our controls, which is happening right now.
Thank you for your answer. What investments has DRT made to modernize tax administration and improve collection to make the agency efficient? Or
we have a lot to do, ma'am, right now. Of course, some of what we've done, and it actually happened before my coming over to the agency, you know, returns are, especially BPT returns, have to be filed online. Any amendments have to be filed online as well. We are hopeful that we will be able to advance some projects with regard to, in collaboration with, for example, Customs and Quarantine. And we have actually started something with them. It's not entirely automated, but we have started some collaboration with regard to, for example, the use tax. And so we continue to have discussions with them. Right now, we have just a simple form of shared Google Docs, and, you know, just better collaboration or coordination with regard to our receipt or our receiving of use tax forms. So automation-wise, you know, I wish I could tell you that, you know, we've had major strides with regard to that. Until we can get some of these systems, the best that we've done is to try to adjust or perhaps amend some of our internal processes.
Thank you. Thank you for your answers. Ms. DOA, just a few questions. I just wanted to know which agencies have expressed concerns regarding staffing, procurement, or operational capacity due to some reduced funding.
The reasons for, you know, this actually goes to the question of lapses. why do lapses arise? And Mr. Guerrero kind of made reference to it, but maybe I can expand on that a little more, right? So for staffing, right, when an agency determines they need staff, and as you've heard the director next to me say that she needs staff, there's a process to raise a GG1 to actually recruit for staff. We have found over the course certainly of the last 18 months that we've had more and more offers made of employment to staff being declined for one reason or another. We need to look into this more closely. Is it pay? Is it conditions? Is there some other issue? And we've certainly had issues with certain staff reluctant to accept positions in certain agencies. And we're trying to find out what indeed is causing this problem. We've just instituted our new recruitment system, which does the evaluations of applications, which used to take weeks, not months. We can do it now in hours. So we're expecting to be able to push out to agencies more applications more quickly. But that doesn't solve the problem of why people are less than anxious or less than eager to work for the government. And we're having to investigate that both on an individual basis and on a global basis. So in satisfying staffing patterns, we're finding in certain critical areas, you know, and obviously public health is one of those where we need staff because the interaction with welfare subjects is direct one-to-one. That people are reluctant to accept these jobs and they regard them as extremely stressful, and that's one of the reasons why staffing is more difficult. As far as procurement is concerned, the bill which you have before you requires agencies to inform DOA of their procurement requirements for the year as best they can by October 31st. Seldom do we get that report. So we enter the new year with procurement. It kind of starts at zero again because agencies have to gear themselves up to actually enter this procurement process. The procurement system, you know, it takes time. You have to get market research, you have to go through the quotation process, and for large contracts, they require legal review, the AG's review. Some contracts get held up at the AG, some don't. So I would encourage, and thank you for allowing me to do this, agencies to think about this process now in order to get off running on October the 1st. We will then be able to fulfill the procurements more quickly and hopefully use up some of these funds that are going unused at the moment because procurement is late in the year. And I can tell you that that in the last 2 months, we've had requisitions entered, as many requisitions entered as in the whole of the previous few months. So agencies need to plan. They need to have people there that can formulate these plans. And DOA is doing its best to react to their requirements and we have fortunately been in the position of being able to improve our systems, and we're doing that.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. Just one question for BBMR. Mr. Lester, I just wanted to know if economic conditions worsen unexpectedly, what is the administration's first line of fiscal response? Spending reductions, revenue enhancements, or reserve utilization?
Reserve utilization, we put 15% reserve on all appropriations just for the reasons that you said, you stated, and also for use maybe later on in the fiscal year when a need arises that wasn't identified early in the fiscal year, so they have funds in reserve to be able to address a situation that came up that was unexpected.
Thank you, Mr. Lester. Appreciate your answer. I had more questions, but directed to OFB. I just want to thank everybody for showing up and being here to indulge our questions. But I'll just ask later. Yeah, on the next round.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That's fine then. I was going to have Vanessa take a crack at it, but if you've got them ready for the next round, we'll do that. Senator Tadegui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Byrne and Lester, did you get the document that was passed out to us from Senator Chris Duenas' office, dated July 10th? It's a rebuttal to the list that you... Have you seen that?
I gave him my copy.
Oh, just now?
I did it right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's going to kind of hard for me to ask any questions since they haven't had a chance to look at it.
You can ask other questions.
Well, can we have just about 3 minutes so they can just look at it so I can ask the questions based on that?
Sure, 3-minute recess.